I hired my cousin Phil, who is a part-time investigator slash chicken farmer, and this is what he found out. So Habte was born to the Duke and Duchess of Kassa in Bulgaria. Is that right? Yeah. Where he developed a passion for bounce houses, horse grooming, and water polo at an early age. Sadly, the mixing of his three loves ended in tragedy, but that's a story for another day. So Habte holds a degree in something probably related to transportation planning from a prestigious university, which shall remain unnamed because cousin Phil lost the post-it note that tied into transportation planning and management. Habte has shared his experience on GDOT's Head of the Curve podcast, discussing various initiatives, including CRS plan, which, as y'all know, stands for cars, race cars, and supersonic jets. I don't know what that means actually, but that's okay. In his off time, Habte likes to visit Asheville, North Carolina, and join into all-day drum circles with his closest friends, Willow, Arlo, Don, and Marley. So, welcome, Habte. Kelli B. Roberts is the state safety program manager at the Georgia DOT, and like Habte, she also failed to provide a bio. So, cousin Phil wanted to charge me $50 to add her background, so instead I just used ChatGPT and filled in the gaps wherever the information wasn't complete. So this is what the AI says, plus John. Kelli B. Roberts is an accomplished professional with extensive experience in transportation safety and knitting. Really? Okay. Pottery, knitting. Her mission is to enhance safety, sustainability, and mobility within the state's transportation infrastructure and to mentor the knitters of tomorrow. This is what it says. Kelli holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the Georgia Institute of Technology, the greatest higher education institution in the world. That's from ChatGPT, I'm just saying. Isn't that right, Michael? Exactly. Throughout her career, she has been instrumental in implementing impactful safety projects and programs aimed at improving road safety for all travelers. Notably, she has contributed to the initiatives such as the Vulnerable Roadway User Safety Assessment, aligning with the US DOT's safe system approach to achieve zero fatalities while promoting emissions, public health, and equity. And if anybody has heard her comments throughout this last few days, she is all about safety. So she's like, woo, safety. When not saving the world, Kelli likes to spoil pets, a cat named Jar Jar Binks, a Chihuahua / Mastiff mix named Millie Vanilli, and two goldfish named, of course, Goldie and Fishy. So, welcome, Kelli. And I'm going to sit down now, and they're in charge. Yeah, thank you, Mike. Thank
you, John. Good morning, everyone. This is a lot of fun. And that's exactly why you have to be very careful with AI, right? So the first time I was just curious and somebody told me that, hey, I need your bio. And I asked ChatGPT, hey, create a bio for Habte Kassa, who lives in Atlanta, Georgia, works for Georgia. That's all I said. And it's got a list of stuff, maybe 3 times more than what John read. And then I say, I want to be that Habte. So it was funny, in his bio, like, it says, Duke and Duchess of Kassa. I was really surprised about that. I don't know where they got it from. Anyway, glad to be here. Thanks again for sticking around. This is the last session, not only the last, but the best session, I guess, and that's why I see full house. So thanks for sticking around. So today we're going to be introducing about the Joint Data Acquisition Program, which has been launched a few years ago. Such a great idea. By the way, this particular program won the World ITS Hall of Fame Award, and it's going to be kind of presented in Dubai in September. So that's such a great accomplishment. Thank you. So this program has accomplished what others did not accomplish in decades. This is only 3 or 4 years old, and it's gone that far. yesterday after he came back from his trip, I saw Sam Harris. Hey, Sam, did you see that? So yeah, because I said congratulations to you, and I said it's in Dubai, right? So who's going to go to take the award? I said, well, I got a passport, and then I said I too have a passport. And so, and I went and told Suan Decker, who is my boss, and I told her about, oh, that's awesome. Where is it? I said, in Dubai. She said, I never been in Dubai. Well, we'll see what happens. And then I came to ask Kofi. So Kofi said, no, I'm not going. ARC send him everywhere, wherever he wants. So probably that's why he's been there maybe 10 times or so. Anyway, we'll see how that plays out. So in all seriousness, though, regarding the data, it's such a great program. We have a lot of data, a lot of tools. That data will remain within GDOT and ARC until user consultants or planning partners use it. It doesn't mean anything at all. So the purpose of this workshop is basically, I'm glad the conference organizers saved this seminar, this session at the last, so that people remember. The last thing that remember would be the data workshop. So with that hope, and we're going to be demonstrating, we're going to be talking about a lot of different data sets, and our field safety engineer, Kelli, will lead us through the remaining of the presentation, and then we're going to be calling out a lot of different subject matter experts to come and share the data. Basically, we're trying to show the use case of these different data that we purchased. And then the most important thing is when you go back, you have to make sure that there is a data. They can, request to the data support group and get access to it, and then be able to use the data and the tools that we have. So we strongly recommend that to all of us use kind of similar data set, and we've seen it in the past when we purchased one set of data for one corridor study and then a different set of data for, and then there is no consistency there. We're not necessarily trying to promote one data set versus the other, but using our contract, we have vetted, which data is kind of better for our state, for us. And so that's probably the primary idea of this data joint acquisition program. With that, I will let it to Kelli, our field safety engineer.
All right, good morning. I would love to keep up the shtick that Sam is on, but he made it. So I don't know why he's not doing this data workshop right now, to be honest, but we'll see. We'll see how this goes. He said that only if I say something really, really wrong will he yank me off the stage. So I've got a good amount of grace here. But yeah, very, very excited just to talk about, the joint data purchasing program that we have. How do you guys get access to it? What data is available to it? And how can you guys leverage that in the things that you're doing today, as well as going after, potentially new contracts, new clients, and all of that fun stuff, right? So yeah, a little bit of the agenda. Again, just talking about, the joint data purchasing program, understanding, the request of the origin, like what was the problem that we identified that really led to this award-winning platform that we have. Again, what data is actually there, how do we use it, and then we have a lot of really great special use cases lined up. The data that we have does have a couple use cases that go through some of the really cool tools and features available for that platform. And then we also have some where we have downloaded some more of that raw data and used it for some other really cool stuff. So we have a lot of great use cases to show today. Understanding the problem. All right, pretend I'm Matt Glasser. Let's see how I do. Here we are in Atlanta. Okay. I am in Gwinnett County, I think, and I'm working on a project and I need origin destination data, right? So I've decided to purchase it from INRIX. Ooh, well, I also have someone who's working on the SR400 expansion, and they purchased OD data from another vendor. Similarly, up 75, and with City of Atlanta. And so as you can see, there are so many different agencies, public agencies, who are working on projects, who need data, and who are purchasing data. Well, they all purchase something that's a little bit overlapping, right? And so not only have all these agencies spent all of this money procuring basically the same amount of data, they've spent 4 times as much and probably 4 times as long when it comes to the actual procurement time. And we know time is money as well. So this joint data purchasing program really solves that. So in the beginning of this, really sitting down with all of our GDOT offices, planning, Office of Transportation Data, operations, safety, design policy, ARC, and CERTA. And we really found that we have a lot of overlapping data needs. And you can see that these were prioritized between a need and a want. And so with all of these, we were able to come up with the Joint Agency Data Governance Program. And so this is basically what it is. It's a partnership between ARC and GDOT to basically purchase all of this data so that you all, or people who are working on behalf of a local agency, have access to this data. And so this is essentially what it is. It's designed to enhance and standardize data analytics and capabilities for all projects. Again, it eliminates unnecessary duplication of data and overall lower agencies' costs, and again, saving time as well. And so this program is responsible for developing an interagency program charter, identifying the funding plan, as well as developing guidelines and policies for data acquisitions. And so this just gives you a little bit more information about who all is sitting at the table, who's making these decisions, and who's looking at these data and these needs for ARC, GDOT, CERTA, and all of these. GDOT Program Manager, that's Sam. Is he here yet? No, good. He doesn't know that I'm doing poorly. Just kidding. And so now we're really going to dive into the available data sources in a moment. I'm going to call Rick Ayers up here from Cat Lab. You can make your way up here, but we're going to switch over to Kofi for a little bit of some closing remarks, really to discuss the importance of this and then dive into the exciting stuff we got about the actual data, what is probe data, and Kofi, thanks.
Nice job, Kelli. Good morning, everybody. So I just wanted to say a few words about why this program existed. We did a regional TISMO plan back in 2020 and in partnership with GDOT. And one of the things we collectively recognized was the problems that Kelli just laid out and a potential solution, which is trying to consolidate data acquisition and trying to do it in a sophisticated but yet also, robust manner so that you can, we all understand better, how we all are using maybe perhaps the same data sets at different scales or different temporality or for different purposes. So the idea is to not only help streamline the procurement, streamline even the data sharing, across different partners, but also to kind of help streamline the standard and the theoretical application of how we use this data for projects and for clients. So it's a way to bring folks together to kind of help and that's the purpose of this workshop, is for us to start having this discussion collectively in terms of how we all are using the same data sets differently, but yet creating standards and coming up with similar expectations while also coming up with ways of being more innovative with these data sets and these data offerings. And then the last thing I'll say is this is, this is a sort of like a new paradigm in terms of how we are all doing work and how we are all doing business, thanks to big data. I remember back in, I won't share my age, but I remember back when my younger planner days, I was driving in my car and using the floating car method to get GPS hits and logging that to see, and picking free flow time periods and peak time periods to do that. And I'm like, what a waste of time this is. But it was the only way to get any kind of empirical data about travel time, which was an emerging performance measure beyond just AADTs and intersection delay. So now here we are with probe data, right? And how do we get to a big data platform that consists of probe data? There's like at least 4 different professions involved with that. And so that's the other cool thing about us all coming together, is you got even IT is involved, data science, and of course planning and engineering and travel demand modeling. Any modelers in here? I knew the modelers would not count their profession as one of the other 4. So A lot of cool professions, a lot of cool people, a lot of cool history, especially in Atlanta. This is, I think, not happening anywhere else in the country, like this conversation that we're having at this scale, for these reasons. So I just want to thank you all for your attention and enjoy the demos.
All right, next I will present Rick Ayers, who will give a brief bio about himself, but he's a fun guy, very fun guy.
Not as fun as John, though. I want a cool bio that was generated by ChatGPT. Where'd he go?
me to make something up on the
Well, we'll forego that. Well, good morning, everyone. I am super pleased to have been invited to contribute and participate in today's data workshop. Again, my name is Rick Ayers. I'm the public sector advocate for the CAT Lab. CAT Lab is the Center for Advanced Transportation Technology Lab out of the University of Maryland. And we are the ones that, we're basically a software lab. We were founded about 20 years ago and are responsible for the software platform that allows you to perform analytics against this terrific big data, pro big data that you have worked so carefully and thoroughly to provide to the rest of the state, partner agencies, consultants, and university researchers. I've been with CAT Lab for going on 6 years now. Prior to that, I need some water. Prior to that, I actually worked for Here Technologies, which is who you are subscribing to for your real-time probe data that is actually archived for the state. And then interestingly, prior to that, I spent about 27 years, I am dating myself, 27 years working in the GIS industry, Geographic Information Systems, worked for a company called Esri. Anyone heard of them? So fantastic company, fantastic time with Esri. So that's led me to be here. Oh, thank you, John. Very kind. That's led me to be recruited by Michael Pack, the director of the CAT Lab, and also provide some interesting integration opportunities of big data. There's some wonderful tools that everyone's been talking about, but what I'm going to share with you today is not only a kind of an overview of some of this probe data that you have access to, but some of the tools, and then provide some just brief snippets or snapshots of some use cases in which some analytics out of probe data analytics, which is a suite of tools that you all have access to, some metrics that come out of probe data analytics are integrated into a series of what I will share with you are executive reports. You know, all of you in here, doesn't matter whether you're on the ops side or planning side or research side, everything, all the data that you kind of dig into and evaluate and analyze, you have to deliver it in the form of a story, right? You have to deliver a message and inform leadership, our elected officials, or the general public. So what you're going to see are examples of how we've kind of dug into this big data, how we've leveraged the tools and probe data analytics and built out these wonderful information products that can be shared with others. This QR code, get your camera out. If you're interested, this QR code takes you to a PDF of a much more comprehensive slide deck than what I'm sharing with you today. It has a more detailed review of all the tools. Like Emily's going to do a demo of probe data analytics. Somebody else might be doing PDA demos as well. I don't know. But it goes through all the tools. It goes through a host of use cases. So much more detailed than what I have here today. Let's kind of jump into kind of providing an overview as has been indicated by our panel here this morning. All of you in this room have access to data and tools. It doesn't matter whether or not you're a GDOT or ARC employee, if you're a consultant supporting GDOT-related initiatives and work, you have access to it. If you are a partner agency You work for the county, you work for the city, you have access to it. It is, I believe, one of the most innovative, comprehensive statewide programs that the CAT Lab has seen. We do work all over the country. Our platform's deployed in every state in the union. You guys have done a great job, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to the work of Matt Glasser, Sam Harris, of course, kind of taking the baton. Troy, I know you're involved to some degree. So thank you all. Thank those boys for helping pull together this phenomenal program. So again, everyone in this room has access to the tools. There's a workflow and a process, I presume, for requesting access to tools in particular. For probe data for RIDIS, it's pretty forward. Just show of hands, how many of you already have credentialed access to RIDIS and probe data analytics? Okay, that's excellent. If you don't, I didn't pepper this into the slide deck. It's pretty straightforward. If you go to ritis.org, ritis.org, there's a link in there to request an account. Data. So how much data, what kind of data is available to you it is characterized in this slide. So there's two primary types of capabilities within the RIDIS platform that provide all of you access to a host of data sources. Now, it's kind of interesting, these two sets of capabilities, they're real-time situational awareness capabilities through RIDIS, and then there's this archive analytics suite of tools. So what I've listed here, and I'm going to go through this because it might trigger something for you, and you may not be aware of the fact that you have access to this, some of these data sources. So of course you have access to real-time speed. All of that real-time speed or probe data from HERE Technologies is also being archived every minute of every day for nearly every roadway segment across the state. We're collecting and archiving real-time speed data. That gets archived in perpetuity for you to perform analytics again. Within this real-time situational awareness platform, you have access to National Weather Service data, RWIS data for the state. GDOT specific event and incident information is being integrated into the platform and being archived. Waze data, so national Waze data, so you can look out across state borders if you're interested to see what sort of impact Waze reported events and incidents have had on the network and the state. Your own work zones, safety service patrol locations. I think that's something we might be working on for you guys, as well as snowplow. That's an option. Don't believe it's implemented yet. Dynamic message sign information. So as your DMS signage is being updated minute by minute, that's being captured in the database and being archived. So super interesting way to kind of perform some after action analysis and assess, okay, for a particular incident on a roadway, how do we manage our DMS signs? What were the messages? Did we clear things? Did we re-message? Were we effective? Access to CCTVs, none of that is archived or recorded for obvious reasons. Kofi, you're a lawyer, so you understand that one. Speed and volume detectors across the state. So you do have a network of speed and volume detectors, primarily on the interstate system. We are archiving that data for you, and we have some detector tools that tap into that. Not integrated in is transit information, but that's an option to consider down the road, and particularly for Regional Commission. All of that data that I've described, all available in a real-time situational context, but it's also, again, being archived into the CAT Labs database. All of that, the probe data, again, minute by minute. I'm going to speak for a moment about probe data, just kind of characterize it for you if I can. But you have two types of probe data mapped to different underlying road databases. So when HERE Technologies is capturing through their probes they're partner probes, if you will, and I'll describe that in a bit. They're mapping that real-time speed data to what's called a TMC segment. TMC segment, traffic message channel. It's an old methodology for communicating through a radio channel, what the speed of roads are for onboard navigation systems. Super interesting, but old technology. But the name is TMC is stuck around. You also have access to a much finer granularity of road segment data from HERE Technologies. It's called topological subsegments. So Emily's going to demo Probe Data Analytics in a while, but you'll see when you log into Probe Data Analytics, or PDA for short, you'll see some options for the state of Georgia. One is TMC, another one is TS. TS means topological subsegments. Again, much finer granularity. So if you're doing corridor analysis where you want to see the details between the signalized intersections, super important to think about and consider using that as your data source for performing your analysis. So that's topological subsegments. You do have data back to 2018, probe data that is, and you also have access to NPM RDS, the National Performance Management Research Data Set. This is a federal data set. We just happen to be the analytics platform that is kind of managed by Federal Highway Administration, and INRIX happens to be the underlying probe data set. So super interesting opportunity for you because you have HERE probe data, but you also have access to this national probe data set from INRIX. The key difference, really quickly, key difference between NPM RDS and traditional your probe data from HERE, you could separate out passenger vehicle data from truck probes. It is national in scope, so you can go beyond your own state border for analysis. Quick primer on probe data. Most folks know what probe data is, but I'm going to set things straight really quickly. While historically, some probe data may have come from location-based services from your phone, right? We all walk around with phones. Things have really been personally identifiable information and privacy has really kind of restricted the use of LBS-based data as a source for probes or for insights about speed and being used for really anything. So LBS data sources are becoming more limited. What the industry is relying on right now is all connected vehicle onboard GPS data. Nearly every car that rolls out the manufacturing floor for the past 10 years has an onboard GPS unit. You may not have an onboard nav system in your vehicle. You can see that there was rain. And also telling you what the rate of rainfall is for that moment in time on that segment of roadway. Now, if you go to the drop down,
That's fun. Yep.
go all the way along and look at the weather. A rendering thing. It's kind of a linear roadway diagram. But precipitation. Think of that radar. Across the map. This is NextRad radar. Rendered on a linear along a linear diagram. So it's showing you at what segment and at what time and at what rate rainfall was falling. So we've been archiving rainfall, precipitation and rate and snowfall and sleet, anything that registers through NextRad, we're capturing that, recording it in real time so you can access it in a traffic map and then archiving it. So this is the first tool in which we're including another data visualization that represents precipitation. Eventually we'll add We'll add precipitation and rate to trend map, probably the temporal comparison map, because I think it's more interesting in a map-based representation than in a linear diagram. But it's super cool that you can make some correlations. How did the weather impact the congestion? If you go back to your metric, Emily, in the center, change it to drop down to comparative speed. It's not obvious here, but sometimes if you got a real big storm, maybe you got a thunderstorm that rolls through, you'll actually see patterns of rainfall and how congestion builds up behind it. Brand new tool, brand new capabilities, brand new data visualization just rolled out a couple of months ago. Congestion scan is the only one that it's available in. So keep that in mind.
Cool. Thanks, Rick. Yeah, that's good to know. Because one of the use cases for this could be, in this example, I've pulled up a crash, but maybe there was a weather event and you want to see, for a hurricane, for example, how are your evacuation routes working? What does the speed look like during those times, or one of a variety of these metrics? So you see the time is what we're looking at the top, and then on here we have the different areas along the corridor. And similar to the other ones, you're able to change these thresholds however you like, move them around. You'll see the colors change. But yeah, maybe you're curious in seeing how your corridor is functioning during an incident, if you need some improvements to your incident management, or a weather event like Rick had mentioned. So those are just a few that I wanted to highlight today. Obviously, there are a ton more in here, but hopefully that was helpful just to see a quick demo of what the website looks like.
All right. I did want to just kind of take a break here. Does anyone have any questions while we kind of did that RIDIS portion of it? I think we have some other things we're going to demo with GeoTab and some OD data. So if there are any RIDIS specific questions, I mean, we got Rick, so ask the hard ones. Yeah.
We have microphones.
So fascinated by this tool, and I know we've had projects where this has been used with great success. The question I have is in terms. Excellent. Okay. Well, then,
No,
if
keep
y'all want to
going with
hold
your
it.
question.
Yeah. So this where I've seen RIDIS used is on the Cobb Parkways, the interstates. When we start looking at neighborhoods and even the prime, main road through a neighborhood, you might be a couple hundred volume, maybe a couple thousand at the very large subdivision. So how accurate, how reliable can I depend on something that has lower volume in order to get that kind of analysis to be meaningful? Or if you want to take this one.
That's a good question, Drew. All of the data that Here Technologies is kind of acquiring, collating, and delivering through their service, it has measurements of reliability. So it's not a measure of accuracy; it's a measure of reliability. That data, minute by minute, for every road segment, there's metadata that tells you what that reliability is from an observation perspective. So it's based off of observed probe data for that time of day. If you're going off peak, sometimes they'll impute the speed values for that segment, for that time, based off of historic conditions or measures of observed speed. And they update here, and INRIX updates their the historic average speed for any given segment I believe it's quarterly for both probe data providers. But in general, during peak hours, you're going to get observed highly reliable measurements. It's off peak that level of reliability may be imputed or not. And there's metadata. One of the tools that one of the tools within Probe Data Analytics that Emily PDA in general demoed, one of them is called the Massive Data Downloader. And in that Massive Data Downloader, it allows you to kind of dump everything for the road segments and the temporal period that you're analyzing. And in that Massive Data Download, that text file that you get, it's ridiculous amount of data, but one of the data elements and metadata is that reliability measure. And our help page will kind of characterizes the description of here's reliability measures.
Testing. Okay, this works. Just so everybody knows, it requires a firm button push.
Any other questions about Riz? And we'll take just this one last one so we can move on to the next quick demo.
Test. Okay. So my question is much more down in the weeds of the data itself and how it's collected. The segment speed data, is it averaging over the whole segment? Because you obviously get a lot of variation when you're looking signal to signal. If you're looking at the middle of the segment, the speed is very different than if you're looking close to the signal. And then I have a follow-up question, but I'd like that one first.
Yeah, so I tried to characterize how the probe data is being mapped in real time and then archived in my presentation. There's a road database that all of the probe data providers use to take the real-time speed that they're capturing from onboard GPS units for fleets and millions of vehicles all over the globe. They're mapping it to a street database. For you guys, you have two street database sources. You have a TMC street database source, and this other one, what was the other one called? Topological subsegment. It's another here database, but again, much finer granularity in terms of spatial granularity, so shorter segments. For the TMC database, those of you who've used Probe Data Analytics, you know that some TMC segments are stupid long, and it's not helpful for doing corridor analysis. You'll have TMC segments that cover several intersections, but this table represents the entire TMC segment. So yeah, it's going to average. In the real world, they're just taking the speed for what they have for this segment of the database, the underlying road segment. Now in the topological subsegment database, they've broken this piece of roadway into 1, 2, 3, 4 segments, 4 lines that represent that road. Each one of those topological subsegments are going to get their own speed in that TS database. So you're going to find in the TMC database very coarse, and it's fine for larger arterials and interstate analysis, but you want to get into the weeds and really do some, fine grain analysis on offbeat arterials, you're going to want to use TS data. And then what was your second question?
My second question is, I remember in the infancy of probe data, the average that they estimated that we were getting for like recorded volume to true volume on the road was around 10%. It was very low, and obviously we're much higher than that now. But do we have a feel for when you say here's the volume of the road we're recording, what that is to boots on the ground, actual cars on the road?
Okay, so be clear, probe data is not AAD. There's no AADT. There's no volumes that are derived from probe data. You're not going to get that. So there's no volumes. It's just speed data. And then probe data analytics that allows you to derive travel times and other performance metrics like comparative speed and travel time index, buffer time index through those tools. But volume data, it is not. That being said, there are two tools within Probe Data Analytics that require volume data. Those two tools are the user delay cost tool. If you want to calculate in dollars the impact that congestion has had on a roadway, you use the user delay cost tool. The other tool that requires volume data is the bottleneck ranking report tool. Those two tools require volumes in AADT. You guys are fortunate in that the state of Georgia is very good about submitting their AADTs conflated to here's underlying TMC network, such that when you're running your UDC or bottleneck ranking calculations within Probe Data Analytics, you can choose, oh, I want Georgia 2022 volumes, or oh, I want to use NPM RDS 2021 volumes. So you guys have, it's really not, Georgia's absolutely the best about submitting their volume data conflated to TMC segments. So in there, you could derive, volume is used, AADT or is used, but there's no output information product from PDA that's going to give you volumes. That makes sense. Is that your question though?
Well, my question is, do you guys have a feel? Is it, what percentage of the car data from? I mean, just if there's
Oh, it's
even.
totally random for, it could be day, time of day of the week, where you're at. The penetration rate is something that industry overuses. But I will say that probe data providers are nearly at 25% during 30% during peak hours of the day. It's amazing how much probe data is out there and crazy reliable. Observed speeds. In fact, I just saw a report from INRIX. They can't reveal their source, but they brought in a couple more probe data sources. They've increased their observed probe readings by 50% and their coverage by 150%. So that many more roads, if you will, that they're collecting probe data for. And that's coming from like 2 additional data sources. So everybody's doing really well from a source perspective.
Thank you.
And one other thing, because to your question, there are some vendors, even in the Eastern Transportation Coalition Marketplace. Let me say that again. Eastern Transportation Coalition Marketplace. Sorry. Where some of these vendors do offer volume estimators, data products. That's separate from what Rick was just explaining. It's a separate application, but I would say the proof is yet in the pudding on those data products and the reliability of them because of the penetration rate or sample size. For purposes that you might be thinking about using it for, may not be high enough in fidelity.
So what I like to share, generally speaking, to industry professionals like yourselves, doesn't matter whether it's probe data or the trip analytics, OD, and trip path data, it's statistically significant.
Yep.
That's the thing you have to think about. Imagine what would be involved in throwing out tube counters, 2 sets of tube counters everywhere that you want to collect speed data, or sending an intern or an engineer out to do travel time runs. It's unbelievable what you guys have access to through statistically significant observed speeds on nearly every road in the state or around the planet. You've got this national data set you can go beyond your border as well. It's pretty remarkable, but that's the term to think about. It's statistically significant.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so next we're going to bring Corey Hull. He's with the RAID, the Eastern Manager there. Before that, Corey was the director of the Valdosta MPO, and then went into consulting, and now is at the Ray. He's going to show you how they use a GeoTab platform, which is another vendor, another company in this space marketplace, and how he's using that to look at fleet electrification. So welcome, Corey.
Just realized that the title slide here has not been updated. The rest of the presentation has been. So if those of you who were at the May 31st training, some of this is going to be a repeat, but most of it will not be. We've actually been working with GeoTab on several projects. So first off, how many people know what the Ray Highway is? Good. I'm good. We're finally getting more and more people aware of the Ray Highway in West Georgia, and the aspect of zero carbon, zero emissions, and zero deaths on our roadways, and using technology and innovations to get there. We've implemented over 20 technologies now. In fact, this map isn't quite up to date. We've got a few more that have been just put out there. Crash detection sensors, things like that. Out there that we've just installed in the last month or so. But one of the things is that the Ray has gone national. I am the Eastern Regional Transportation Manager, covering the 24 eastern states of the Union. We're now working in 30 states with 55 different active partners throughout the country on projects to implement those innovations and technologies and other programs that have been thought of here at the Ray here in Georgia, or we're working with them to implement new technologies in these other states. One of the ones that we started with was the right-of-way solar tool. Many people are familiar with that. Using our publicly available data sets, working with ESRI to develop suitability site locations for a right-of-way solar. This here's an example of a location we worked last year in Maine with their DOT. And this here is the original site in LaGrange on I-85. And this kind of just shows here in Georgia, potentially what could be generated by right-of-way solar. But we're going to kind of going beyond that and looking where do you use this technology, these resources to actually help power electric vehicles, how to be more resilient for your DOT, and be more resilient for the grid if that's what you choose to do. So we have partnered with GeoTab, one of the nation's largest providers of probe data for medium duty and heavy duty vehicles. We started with 2 corridors to look at. We've since done a study in Austin, Texas that I'm going to kind of go into in more detail. We're kicking off a study this week with the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission that I'm going to talk about, and then analyzing that data a little bit. And a lot of these slides are coming from GeoTab, so I don't want to take credit for them. A lot of them you may have seen before if you've seen a GeoTab presentation. But using all of this connected vehicle data to get more information, help us answer our questions better. Vehicles for that particular geography. In another area, it's 5%. But as you start to look at your big corridors, that data evens out, and it's about 25% that they have penetration. And there's a lot of information you can get. One of the things that I think would be exciting to do is start, and this is where somebody's got to start doing this, is taking the data from RITIS, taking the data from GeoTab, and what else can you do maybe in GIS and overlay these things and get more information out of all of this. But GeoTab is asking the where, the when, the what, and the why with all of their data. They are collecting 55 billion records per day of data nationwide. When we asked them to run the state of Pennsylvania, they said no. They can't do it because there's so many records. We're actually we're taking it down to counties and corridor levels because there is so much data, and really they don't feel that you can get much more insight out of it by doing something statewide versus a set of counties. So that's where having conversations with them and looking at the data to really determine ahead of time what questions you're really trying to answer with your particular project. So you're getting spending the most valuable of your time getting the data that you actually need. They have trip purpose in here. That's one of the things we really look at, origin destination, when we're beginning to talk about electrification for trucks. Where are they going to and from? Are they trip vocation refers to long haul, short haul, door-to-door service? Which type of vocation is that? And then stop analytics. Where are they stopping at? How long are they stopping? Things like that. So the RAY works with our DOT partners and Geotab to begin answering in our electrification clinic some of these challenges and opportunities. Asking these questions. Where do we start with medium and heavy duty electrification? It's not going to be the same. Excuse me. It's not going to be the same as your passenger cars. How do we address the challenges that we have? Excuse me. And what information is going to be useful for the DOT and the DOT's partners as you go to implement this for the private companies? They're going to be partnering with the DOT to implement this. What kind of information results are they going to need? So for the Texas DOT, when we began to analyze their electrification potential, we looked at which medium and heavy duty vehicles can be electrified and where do they operate? There are two parameters that we put in place for the data. How far does the vehicle travel before returning back to its home base? And how long does that vehicle stop at its domicile? And that's so you can determine how long it's going to be there to recharge. So we're looking here at the Austin, Texas district in Texas. So the 4 or 5 counties there around Austin. And the orange indicates the darker the orange, the more trucks in that area that would be favorable to electrification. So you see, based on the charging time required and the miles of travel of those vehicles, that a couple of those counties, the trucks in those counties are more likely to be beneficial for electrification. Some of those other counties where they may not have that same domicile, they may be traveling further distances, are not really appropriate for electrification. We can then look at the individual stops. Where are the largest number of medium and heavy duty stops occurring? And we can get that in point data from Geotab. Taking those stops and creating hexate segments, and then looking at where are those segments that have long duration stops, longer than 60 minutes, where they could be charging while they're out there making their trips. So you see that we're getting less and less sites and less locations as we go through this. Ultimately looking down to potential corridors and determining along those corridors where are those best locations. Again, you can begin to see that there are darker locations along that corridor. Those are the more high volume of stops at those locations. And then in Texas, we decided to do a deep dive into where the current truck stops. They wanted to look at partnering with those organizations first. And so you can even deep dive into that, and you already see that those stops are where these exact trucks are already stopping. So that could be a great partner potential for the Texas DOT to begin installing a medium duty and heavy duty at those locations. So we do know that medium duty and heavy duty vehicle chargers take a lot more electric energy to power than does your personal vehicle charger. So the next step for the Ray is our right-of-way transmission tool. Very similar to our right-of-way solar tool. This is something that we're going to be working on this summer, unveiling, is working to identify the suitability along our nation's roadways, working with state DOT partners to identify where can you put electric transmission lines in our DOT right-of-ways. Whether they are above ground or below ground. Of course, below ground offers more resiliency opportunities. They can be co-located with fiber opportunities as well. But this is not something that is terribly ununique. Wisconsin has done this before. Italy and France are doing this in their roadway corridors. But we have got to get the electric generation from wind and solar that are often not located near our power centers, our demand centers in metropolitan areas. And new electric transmission is needed. So we'll be working on our right-of-way transmission tool. And as I said, we're putting the finishing touches on it. It's going to be ready this summer. And I believe Minnesota is going to be our first state that we're going to run this on. But we're working in lots of other communities, and lots of other states are excited about this because their utility companies are trying to get where the power is generated to where its demand is. Of course, the Ray has many other activities that I'm not going to go into today. If you want to chat about that later, we can. But thank you very much for having me.
Any questions for GeoTab as before we, or for Corey about GeoTab before he steps off the podium? All right, and just another reminder, this data set is also available to you all. As long as you're working on a project in Georgia, or if you are a Georgia agency and public agency, you can get access to this GeoTab data. If you are interested, I'll be around to kind of give you an email address on how to get access to that. Next up is Habte. He's going to introduce our next demonstration.
You saved it, so you'll probably find it. Okay, Brian, come in. Let me just introduce Brian first. Thanks for really being resilient and coming here. You have a long flight yesterday, a long drive, but thanks for coming to share your experience with Replica. So Brian Powers is AICP, and he has 10 years of diverse transportation planning experience and serves as a project manager in the transportation planning group for RSNH. Brian is experienced with a wide range of projects, from localized intersection analysis and multimodal corridor studies to complex regional and statewide studies. He is highly experienced in data collection and analysis, GIS applications, the development of cost-benefit analysis for both discretionary grants as well as project evaluation and prioritization, resilience evaluation, and freight mobility efforts. Brian is also experienced in leading and facilitating public meetings and workshops, and focuses on providing clear and understandable project information to both stakeholders and the general public. Please welcome Brian. So you're hiding it from me. Oh, we've got all the tabs.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry for the brief delay there. I'm sad that I did my homework because I would have loved to have heard that I was a duke or an heiress of St. Simon, but that was me, generally in a nutshell. I work with RSNH basically throughout the Southeast, and I'm here to chat about another GPS-related tool called Replica. And I'll just go ahead and kind of jump in. I won't read that disclaimer on the bottom, but I am not a representative of Replica. I'm just here talking about some of the use cases that we found helpful, where we've used it, and I'll run through just a very quick demo. So I will say that if there are very in the weeds technical questions, which groups like this tend to ask, I will ask that you go to their website and contact their support. They are actually very helpful and very quick if you have very specific information. So generally what I'm going to talk about is kind of what it is, what do we use it for, why have we used it, and as I said, a couple of examples of use, and I'll do kind of a little live example as well. So kind of what it is, I'm actually very grateful in the order that we've gone in, because a lot of the conversation today has been about big data. This is very similar to that. This is a big data resource that utilizes GPS information, pings all throughout the US, and we can then analyze it in different ways. So basically, they have their special blend of herbs and spices that goes into this data as they purchase, and they move it forward and present it in a very interactive dashboard website interface, which we will look at here in a moment. What I want to highlight is our map there. That's kind of just the general area that we are in. One of the main features of it is kind of an origin destination analysis. And so what I did there, I see various examples throughout my presentation, but basically this is an example of what they call places studies. So you can zoom into an area. I've kind of chose where we are today, and it will show kind of trips by origin. You'll see the nice bright colors ranging from yellows down to kind of a darkish purplish color. The higher intensity brightness is generally higher volumes that they're picking up per number of trips that they've analyzed. And so, I will say that their name is generally, they call themselves Replica. Throughout the conversations we've had with them, it is because they take this GPS-related data, they of course make it anonymous, and so it's not you that is traveling, but then they they turn it into basically a travel demand replicate of who and what is moving. So there's no information that says I'm leaving my house and going to my place of employment. They know that someone is moving from a residential area into a place. And then there's also dashboards. We find these from our side when we're looking at them, they're really great for more regional data. As you start to look at maybe a city or county or state in some cases, they organize their info. So the Southeast, for their example, is effectively Florida, Georgia, South Carolina is one of their mega regions where they contain their data. And you can, of course, switch amongst them. I just wanted to highlight some of the information that you're going to see. So again, kind of highlighting where we are in St. Simons. It will bring up nearly statistics, based on census data that they process. And one of the fun things across the bottom there is a chart showing, approximate times, trip start times. So you can see generally when peaks and valleys are happening and what this is providing. And it may be difficult to see in the back. There's a darker dot and a yellow dot that's showing effectively different times. It's basically a 6-7 month comparison, December of 23 to June of 24, showing if there's any drastic changes in what could happen. If we were to kind of dive in, I'm sure that since we're in kind of a coastal community, the summer traffic is probably a whole lot different than the winter traffic, but we won't go too far into that. So what do we use it for? More often than not, probably the best way I can describe it is to fill gaps or to find information very quickly. A lot of times we have involved ourselves in some grant development opportunities, intersection and corridor analyses, looking at regional and statewide studies, and then of course, using that throughout the Southeast, and this data set is nationwide. So some of the features that can pull up almost instantaneously is you can zoom into an area. This area that I've zoomed into in the map is a corridor/bridge area near Savannah between Tybee. And basically it's pulling in the number of trips that it believes are in that area from the data that they've gathered. And then I pulled out two statistics that you can pull up almost instantly, understanding how many people are moving in the area and their percentages. So what we're looking at here, private auto, understanding those movements, looking at biking and walking, which is very important to us in a handful of studies that I'll talk about. And then, of course, commercial vehicles, which we were speaking about earlier. And then this is a very much a access route to a beach community. So you can see that the peaks are during the warmer hours of the day, and then it starts to fall off as the sun starts to set. So it's kind of an interesting, I'll call it a starting hour. So why have we used it? Like I mentioned, kind of filling in the data gaps. You want to understand roughly how far people are traveling. Some areas have long commute times, some areas are shorter. I just picked a random example where it's generally over 8 miles is what's experienced in this example. Kind of understanding those trends, as I've shown, the trip purpose, understanding if people are going home mostly, going over towards work, shopping, eating, or if it's a commercial trip in the area. Estimating those volumes, whenever I talk about this data, I think we've actually talked about it earlier as well. This is based on GPS related data. It's not a true count of what's happening. In many cases, what we've done is tried to back into some of the information using camera count technologies or tube counts, if available, if project timelines allow. As I'm sure many of you, where we were very interested in the bicycle and pedestrian movements, we selected only the routes along it, and it highlights the series of movements that it's detecting. And then taking a little bit of a zoom out along the same corridor, understanding where those same trips are moving from. So in my example that I've shown, these are trips by origin. So generally, because they're biking, walking, you can see that the clustering is along that main corridor there and starts to fall off. So another example, so this is up in the Hall and Jackson County area, understanding where people are going, where they're coming from, and utilizing mode breakouts as necessary. So what you can see in the top right is that it's actually pulling from those counties, and I've kind of filtered it down to just 2 counties. I wanted to understand where in those counties people are coming from, so you can see the intensities varying there. Then so I want to just jump in. So I'm going to click on studies because I find these to be really interesting and really fun. And again, we'll hopefully be relatively quick here on the Wi-Fi. Should have done the Rachel Ray aspect here. But so here we go. We've loaded up our network links, and hopefully everyone can see it. But basically, all right, so you can zoom in to an area, and you'll notice that as you zoom in, additional corridors become available. And if we are interested, currently I've selected a handful, but I will just get rid of that. And we'll see if it works. There you go. And you can zoom in, and you'll see that you can actually select very small, effectively what would be like an alleyway, things of that nature. Depending upon what fidelity Replica believes their data is, they will give you, I don't know if you can see my mouse circling there, they'll let you know what their certainty in their data is, which can be very important. Again, when we're typically referencing this, we identify it very much as a data point. It's definitely not the end all be all, but it definitely points us in a direction where other data might not exist. Now, if we were to zoom out, so that's looking at the network links. If we were interested in trips by destination, you can then see almost instantly, it kind of lets us know, and I have no filters on at this moment. This is just our South Atlantic mega region, as they call it. So you can see that in our area that we're looking at, there's some clustering in the Brunswick area, a little bit in St. Simons. And you can instantly shift to origin and everything like that. There are a few ways that you can customize. Generally, what it will give you is a weekday and a weekend throughout the years. And you can also pick a fall season or a spring season if you are interested in comparisons within the year and things of that nature. And so it gives you this general idea. You can break it down by different geographies, which is fun. Generally, we try and use either tracks or block groups just to get as close as we can. from my conversations with the replica folks, they actually bring the data in as point-to-point information, so you can generate your own custom geographies if you have your own traffic analysis zones for your community or other breakouts. You can actually utilize those, input them into the software, and then develop your own analyses that might look up a little differently. You can customize the way it comes in, and then of course the ever important download. You can download it as Excel and GIS related information. So then I will go back just to show the trends dashboards, again, in our area. Basically, I've just kind of filtered it to our St. Simons area just to show some of the tools. Going through and loaded nice and quick for us. So generally, how the trips change over a several month period. You can look through, here's our modal split, which is always an interesting one to take a look at. And in the back, it may be a little difficult to see because the purple and the kind of, call it red-ish color kind of blend together at distance. But as you can see, obviously in this area, mostly private auto dependent and different metrics that you can pull through. So we really enjoy using this software, and I actually messed up just a tad. I want to show you one more thing in the studies. Let me jump back into this. One of the most interesting things that we found is the summaries. And so this is where it actually, if I had filtered out to only our area, I would get summaries based very specifically in the GPS results for this region. So understanding these are the items that I've shown also on the PowerPoint, but primary mode, understanding what the purpose of these trips are, our starting hours, duration, distance, and origin pairs. If you were interested in pulling this information out and putting it in Excel for your own idea, you can kind of see where some of these census tracts are. I find it easier to use the GIS function and pull it into your own shapefiles, but if you were to pull it into Excel, you can do that as well. Who's in your area and like private auto availability, which is ever important in a lot of our studies. So with that, I'll go ahead and navigate back to this, which really is just a thank you slide, but any questions for me? All right, I'll take that as a good one.
All right, we have two Jonathans making their way to the stage now. Jonathan number one, here we go. This is Jonathan Nicholson. He works for Atkins, also helps me out on the safety contract. Huge data guy. He was most excited to come to this workshop, so he's even more excited to be a part of it now. So I think he's going to talk about how we actually downloaded some of this probe data and overlaid it with GIS and some of those additional functionalities.
I was told my presentation is up here, but now's the moment of truth. All right. There we go. Thank you. Okay, I was told I have 5 minutes, so this is going to be pretty quick. Okay, a little background first. So as part of the GDOT safety program, we were presented with a problem of identifying on-system always stop controls, so four-way stops in districts 2 and 5. There was not a database of that information, so obviously a manual review of just aerial photography would be too labor intensive. So as Kelly noted, I'm the data guy, and that has kind of my reputation within Atkins Realis. So the question was posed to me of, can we automate this in some way? So rewind a little bit back in time. Before this question was posed to me, we were actually working with the Office of Planning, with Habte, and if you saw Jennifer, I'm not sure if she's here, but the update to the Georgia statewide travel demand model, Rick kind of teed this up for me earlier, the underlying here shapefile. So As part of the Office of Planning, we were actually working with the HERE data, the underlying shapefile, to assist with the update of the Georgia Statewide Travel Demand Model, the GSTDM. So all the cool stuff that you see in RIDIS, you see the roadway links and stuff, that is a GIS layer that we do have access to. It's not a user interface, so I can't do a live demo, a lot of data. So anyway, so the database that I'm going to talk about is called Nav Streets. And it is, so what is it? It's a collection of GIS layers and data tables. And it is like I said, it is a lot of data. The state of Georgia, just by itself, it's 5 gigabytes worth of data. The Nav Streets reference guide, if you have trouble sleeping at night, it's 1,300 pages. Thankfully, it has a Control F search function that you can actually not have to read the whole thing. But so the layers that we used, again, we had been working with, I kind of knew some of the data that was available to us. So when the question was posed to me, it was like, I think we can use this data, but let me dig into it. So after doing that, like I said, it's a series of GIS layers and then data tables that you can then link to the GIS data. So there's a street shapefile, which is all streets in the state of Georgia. Z levels, which is essentially all the links have shape points. The Z levels is kind of the shape points behind the links that tell you whether or not it's an actual intersection. So it's like the relative vertical position of a point. And then the data tables that we use, I won't get into the specifics. You can get the Nav Streets reference guide to kind of go through them. But there's 2 data tables. One of them tells you whether there's a condition present at a node or on a link, like a traffic sign. And then there's another table, so that it's sort of a multi-layered join. And then there's another table that's called the condition modifier, which if there's a traffic sign present, it tells you the type of traffic sign. So in this case, you link those 2, you can see that there's a traffic sign and then what type of sign it is. So this is just a sample of what the all streets network for Cobb County looks like. I think for Cobb County, it's just to give you a sample size of, I think Cobb County, the number of links just in Cobb County is on the order of 250,000 segments. So when you blow that up to the state of Georgia, it's quite massive. So how did we do it? I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because I'm probably already halfway through my allotted time. But it was a combination of GIS tools and computer programming. So the GSTDM is written in Cube software. I've been working in Cube for 20 years. It's a computer programming language. I'm super familiar with it. You could probably do this in Python or R or something, but I stuck with what I know. And because we had already started processing some of the HERE data in Cube already, so some of the code had already been written. But you can kind of see it's a multi-layered data join. There's no one table or GIS layer that you could just pop this out. So you join like link ID to multiple sources. You have to know the endpoint, the reference nodes. Again, if you have specific questions about this, you can ask me later. But so we wrote this code to process all this data, and then we did some spatial joining back to the intersection layer. GDOT keeps up with, they have a road inventory database that has an on-system, like who maintains the facility. So we did a spatial join to extract out just what are on-system routes. So we went through this. I think I pitched the idea to, I think we did it for a subset and pitched it to Sam. He liked it, asked us to expand it to districts 2 and 5. And then we got in front of Kelli. She liked it, so we ended up running it for the whole statewide application. So we did it all in GIS, converted it to KMZ, and then I handed it off to our safety team to actually do the manual verification. Because I like to say automation is 10% of the effort that gets you 90% of the way there. 90% of the effort gets you the last 10% to do the actual verification. So the caveat, no data source is perfect. That's why I always say the manual verification was still required. But when we ran the application for the whole state, you can see the map of the always stop control locations on system versus on zoomed in view to Google Street so that we could actually see the locations that it identified as always stops. And I forget, I don't know, the safety team, I went through it. I think it was like 90-something% accurate. So I think some locations, maybe had been converted to an always stop or maybe even a roundabout, but it was pretty accurate. And again, to do it manually going through Google Earth, I would hate to have been assigned that. Statewide only took maybe 30, 40 minutes. I mean, it was pretty quick considering the amount of data that we were processing. Acknowledgements, Habte, like I said, I was going to spend a little bit more time on this. This whole data purchasing program, Kofi, Habte, and I kind of grew up in our careers together, can tell you stories about there being no data. So that's why I'm a data nerd now, because as data has rolled out, like just the way that we had to do business before, having access to all this data. But fun fact, when we were working on the statewide demand model, we were looking for data sources to potentially use to help with the update. We were talking with a third-party vendor at the time that sells here data, and we were getting ready to pull the trigger on that when Habte realized that GDOT already had access to it. So saved us a good chunk of money and some time too, because we didn't have to procure that data. So Habte, Sam, Kelli for letting me, work with data. I love working with it. And then my partners at Atkin Realis, Zahn, I'm not sure if he's in the room, but Zahn helped me work through some of the specifics of the HERE data, and then Ashlyn and Travis on our safety team. And then whoever I don't know who did the manual verification at Atkins, but whoever I handed off to had to manually verify the 200 and something locations that I identified. So I think I got that in 5 minutes.
All right, this is our last one, and we have to stick through it because I plugged it earlier. But this is all about speed. Speed has been a huge part of the conversation, state level, national level, super exciting. So Jonathan Wallace is getting set up here, and he's going to show how we downloaded some speed data from ClearGuide and did exactly kind of what you were referencing earlier, looked at that 85th percentile. How does that compare to the delta of the actual posted speed? And what we're using it for internally is the low-hanging fruit of where we can actually lower the posted speed. So very excited to have Jonathan walk through this with us. Oh, and Jonathan,
All right.
for our cadence.
Side note. So yeah, real quick. So like Kelly said, the ask was to identify corridors throughout the state where the posted speed and the actual speeds, differ, with the goal of trying to reduce speed limits on the corridors. So it started with City of Decatur. It was a small ask, but when the folks started getting into the data, they realized you can do it in the same amount of time for the city as you can really for the whole state. But we just kind of kept it to 3 and 6 before we, looking at the whole state in its entirety. So you can see the segments here. Over 5,000 segments for District 3, almost 3,000 segments in District 6, then obviously much smaller segments in the City of Decatur. So looking at free flow speed, so 85th percentile, and then we were categorizing these corridors for corridors that are under the speed limit, which is 5 miles an hour or less than the posted speed, around the speed limit, so plus or minus 5, and then above the speed, we were looking for where speeds were more than 5 miles an hour. So Drew, I think this is kind of getting to what, you were speaking about earlier. This is a dashboard, so hopefully it works. It's working earlier. Should zoom out. That's why you don't do. There it goes. All right, so this is District 6. So you can see here, all the colors, show the state route system. You can click on the filters, interstates, expressways, frontage roads. It'll select those different roadways. But everything in green is around the speed limit. So what the probe data is saying is, around what the posted speed limit is. And then in the yellow, you can see that's everything that's above, 5 miles an hour over the posted speed. And then, what we were looking for was locations where we're 5 miles an hour less than the posted speed on average, the 85th percentile. So with the goal of, if you can lower speed limits, we'd like to lower the speed limits because we know they're driving slower than what the speed limit is. Then just go to zoom in a little bit more. So here's the area indicator with the segments that we were looking at. So you can see that section just north of College Avenue, that's an area where within the City of Decatur, they could reduce those speed limits within the city and create safer driving conditions. So all of this is using the HERE data. It's really easy to use. You can pull thousands of segments just as easily as you can pull 100. And this was a good use case using this data.
All right. Well, we have one more. Oh, I think we do have one more application to show kind of just like clear guide. If Chris, do you want to come up? We are running a little short on time, so he's going to be really awesome and very fast.
Yeah, I won't go through the presentation. I have the website up so we can just blaze right through it. So I'll just cover some of the key points of Clear Guide that I want to show you guys. All right, so let this load up here. So as you load into Clear Guide, this is what it looks like here. And let's get this real-time map loaded. All right, so real-time map, there are some overlaps with previous presentations that we had as to how this data is derived, but our real-time map allows us to view corridors in real time. So we can look at speed, we can look at anomalies, we can look at other types of certain data here. And as you can see in our real-time map, we can look at it as a percent of speed, free flow speed. We can look at it as an anomaly. An anomaly is just something where conditions are atypical. So if you see anything highlighted in orange or red, you can view the map in that way so that you can more easily detect where atypical conditions are occurring. You can also view this in historical context. You can toggle through here and look at past data. So there's that option as well. Won't spend too much time on it. So that's just your real-time map there. We also have the ability to view speed ranking. So if you want to quickly look at corridors where speed may be a concern, or if you want to determine if there are corridors in your specific region where speed is a concern, you can also do that as well. And you can interface a little bit different on this laptop, but our speeding map is right here. Let me collapse this legend. Maybe this will expand out. But nonetheless, you can do that. You can export that as a spreadsheet, and you can quickly see which corridors are experiencing the most vehicles exceeding the speed limit by a certain threshold. So if you toggle over there, you can do that. Something that I really want to delve into here about Clear Guide is the ability to create routes. So we do have predetermined segments or pre-created segments here in Clear Guide, where if you click on one, it'll give you information on it. And if you want to create a route out of that, as also known as combining multiples of these routes, you can, or multiple of the segments to create a route, you're able to do that as well. And with your route creation, you're able to derive a lot of data. So I'll just quickly walk through how to do that. So you click on a segment here. I think this is here in District 6. So like Dews Pond Road, for example, just to quickly demonstrate that, you can start here at your starting point, and you can select where you want to end the route. So let's say I want to end the route right here. And if I right click and end the route, it'll automatically create the path. Sometimes this path is also make sure that the path is the route you want to take. And if you click on create route, you're able to share that route if you have an account. You can also automatically have a route created in the reverse direction. So if I do that, it'll automatically create two routes for me. One in my original direction that I drew out, and then another one in the reverse direction. So I won't go through the rest of that route creation process, but I will show you some routes that I already have created here that allow you to view an array of metrics here. So we'll just look at this one, for example, here, and we'll zoom into it. And this is a very small route, but nonetheless, we'll be able to still view that data there. And what we can do here is we can view a bunch of different type of metrics here. We can look at speed, we can look at travel time index, planning time index. So here's a list of all the data that you can view from this, as well as the granularity. So you can change the frequency in which the data is aggregated. You can select time ranges. You can also do before-after analysis by looking at your time of day, changing your report type to time of day. You can also look at you can also render what type of visual visual output you want it to give you. So if you want to look at it as a graph, if you want to look at it as a spreadsheet, you can do that. And then you can also look at your speed reports on this. So if you want to create a personalized route where speed has been regarded as a concern, you can actually do that by going and looking at your speed contours. And let's see, give me a report here. Let me try to render that. Okay. You select the larger route here really quick. All right, so here's an example of that. So as you can see here, I am looking at State Route 92 in Cherokee County, and basically what this allows us to do is see where speeds are concerned along a stretch of a route. So we have those highlighted in purple are higher percentage of vehicles that are exceeding the speed limit by 10 miles per hour or greater. Once again, you can adjust that threshold to whatever threshold you want that to be. So that allows you to see this kind of in a diagram of distance and time. And as you can see here, where we have our signals is where we have the least amount of speeding, but as we deviate away from the signals, we do start to see those higher speeds. So hopefully that was quick enough. Hopefully that was a quick overview. Thank you, guys.
And now I will welcome our president of IT, Mr. Sam Harris.
I'll be very excited to hear we're going to close this thing out. So one more time, outstanding conference. You guys have been awesome in terms of participating, enjoying yourselves, etc. Volunteers have been absolutely amazing. All the committee work, just the work that goes into this. I mean, you heard me say it last night, but I want to give one more round of applause for Alex and Jared sitting in the back over there. They outstanding job, guys. Great. We're going to be sending out a survey probably within the next 5 days. It's going to cover conference, from technical, also from, it's going to cover many different areas, but definitely technical, your time here at the King and Prince, etc. That's very important, guys. Let's fill that out. It will play into an impact of the board's decision on what we're doing in the future. So it's going to be really important that you open the email and then be able to fill it out. Other than that, we're going to go ahead and close it out. Thank y'all. Very important. Drive back safe. And go ahead. If y'all are staying longer, great. Go have fun. Go have fun on the beach. And if not, we'll see you elsewise. Thank y'all.
Next time you'll know.